Welcome back to the Craftsmen Online podcast. This is a weekly program focused on the relevant topics in Freemasonry and the various aspects of the craft. Any opinions, thoughts, or viewpoints shared during this program are that of the individual and do not reflect the official position of any Grand Lodge, appendant, or concordant body from which that member may hail. I'm your host, Brother Michael Arce, co-founder of CraftsmenOnline.com, and we're joined once again by one of our favorite recurring guests. He returns, Brother John Nagy. Welcome back, Brother John.
Thanks again for having me, Brother Michael. It's an honor and a privilege.
And he joins us tonight as we talk about the plight of the Three Ruffians. And according to Albert Mackey's manual of the Lodge, the great design of the third degree in Freemasonry is the principle of fidelity. And of course, you can't have a hero of a story like Hiram Abiff without a villain. And in this case, we get three in Freemasonry known as the Three Ruffians. So we kind of covered the beginning, middle, and end of the Hiramic legend in previous podcasts, John. The surprise twist here, though, is that these villains are known as brothers and men of Tyre. So what led them to become the ruffians?
Their own nature did. Their very own nature, as a result of not wanting to finish and be completely worthy of what it was that they were seeking, they damned themselves, literally, or shall I say, doomed themselves for not being able to achieve what it is that the entire goal was set out to do. They were so focused on obtaining secrets and believing that they could be handed over to them, and they didn't realize that the secrets of a master mason are the disciplines that are internalized when they were working through the EA and fellow craft work. They were fellow crafts in name only, and they were attempting to go beyond their title to get mastery. And the problem is that we have in our craft a schism between operative and speculative. And operative, there's only two levels. There's apprentice and there's fellow craft, AKA master. Whereas speculative, you've got three levels. You got the EA fellow craft and master mason level. And in all seriousness, the fellow craft is really just the second stage of the apprentice because of the way that the Grand Lodge structured the manner to which we progress. The fellow craft literally was the second part of the entered apprentice degree, the original entered apprentice degree that was put forth in around 1717 when we created the Premier Grand Lodge experience, franchise experience, whatever you want to call it. But so we've got the tale and we've got the mythology and the lore, and we're trying to fit it into the shoe with everything else. And as a result, you have three people who are dubbed fellow craft, and in operative terms, they were master masons, but in our speculative crafts, they were entered apprentices stage 2, and they hadn't done the EA work, much less the fellow craft work. They haven't really done any of the entered apprentice work. They were given the tools, and they were not using the tools properly because they did not in any way, shape, or form try to do any of the first work, much less the second stage work. So, what are those stages? Well, the first stage is you like I've said to you before, you got to tame those dogs. You've got to get your heart brought into order from the chaos that we are born with. And then you've got to bring your mind into order. And they had done none of that. If you take a look at what went on in the conversations between Hiram Abiff and the Three Ruffians, they had none of the internal disciplines that you would expect from a fellow craft, much less an entered apprentice working on themselves. So, why were they problematic or plagued with whatever it was that prevented them from having the secrets and trying to accelerate the process of getting into masterhood? They were their own worst enemies. They refused to do the work, much less complete it. And they figured that they could strong arm somebody who's actually done the work, and he told them where to go.
Pretty much. Well, that's the interesting part, is that For brothers that have gone through the third degree and you've witnessed and been a part of the Hiramic legend, that first time that you see this happening, you're like, oh no, like I'm supposed to learn something really important from this Hiram Abiff. You're imagining after going through much of our degree work that you're going to get some maybe big lecture or some long speech, some sort of oratory is going to come, but it never produces itself because, well, as we've laid out here, the Three Ruffians are successful in what they were seeking, and they threaten somebody and they take the person's life. They didn't get the ultimate thing they were looking for, but the evil that they had threatened with, they come through on that. What's always been interesting to me though is you see it as a Master Mason for the first time, and then when you go in to see the degree performed later and later, you begin to pick up on the cues of the Ruffians and go, it could have ended differently for them had they not asked something a certain way that they ask it.
And I see so many people, members coming through, they're still seeking the lost word as Ruffians do. They want it handed over to them, and they don't realize that you literally get the secrets by doing the work. It doesn't get any simpler than that. You develop the disciplines that each and every one of those working tools exemplifies or symbolizes. And when you take those working tools and the disciplines that they symbolize or allude to and internalize those disciplines, by God, you've got the secrets of a Master Mason. But you've got individuals who believe that if they just pay enough money and they show up for enough degrees and they memorize and spew back and don't internalize the disciplines, that they'll get ultimately what the Ruffians sought. And as Hiram Abiff said, I can't do it. I won't do it. And I shall not, will not, cannot.
Right.
And he's pretty well saying how you're seeking it, it ain't going to happen. And if more members turn around and said, well, what exactly is the temple and how do you complete it? Maybe we'd have a lot less ruffians going to higher degrees, seeking like the Ruffians. And the problem is, as I've said before, you've got so many individuals who haven't done the work, and they fall back on the usual excuse, the work is never done, the temple is never completed, and they don't realize that it's not work in general, and it's not temples in general, it's a specific work and a specific temple. And if you don't ask yourself the question, what exactly is it? What is the temple that is referred to in the Hiramic legend? And what you find out is it's basically the foundation work and the house that is not built with hand. What is that? Well, the temple is built without hand. It's as simple as that.
When we talk about the role of the Ruffians and how it happens, because you had shared Hiram Abiff's response when they asked, give me the secret word of Master Mason, and they threaten him like, I'm going to do this to you if you don't give this thing that I'm seeking for. And because there's three of them, I know they're supposed to represent, the three stages or 3 points of life. And I kind of look at it this way, and we all know people that fall into one of these three buckets. You have the folks that are looking for the shortcut. Like, hey, you've done this work before. Can you just send me your paper? I swear, I'll make a couple mistakes on it so the teacher's, it's not completely obvious to the teacher that I'm borrowing your work. Those are the folks that are looking for a shortcut.
They're cheating themselves. I had a beautiful life lesson when I was taking my graduate engineering economics. I had to repeat it because when I took it the first time, I was suffering a bad case of mono. I was a young man, didn't realize I was suffering it. And I fell asleep, and I didn't have a grade that was suitable for a master's level in the undergrad. So they say, well, we're going to require you to take it over again. And it was one of the best gifts that was ever put upon me by the staff of the engineering college. Because what I did was as follows. I said, I screwed up the first time by no fault of my own. It was literally a physical ailment that I was going through. And I didn't get the grades that was consummate. So I really didn't develop the disciplines that were required for engineering economics. So when I went through it this time at a graduate level, every single problem that came my way, I analyzed how the structure of the problem was put forth. I evaluated what the best course of action was to solve this particular problem, and even explore other opportunities to solve it in different ways. And I literally solved the problem, and I take the piece of paper, and I didn't even save it. I crumpled it up, put it in the garbage, and then I try to solve it again. And then I crumple it up, throw it in the garbage, and I kept on solving the same problem the same way. And sometimes I try to put twists on it. And as I was going through this, I wound up internalizing the understanding of what was really being asked by the economic problem that was engineering based. I passed the course very well. I don't remember what it was, but I was pleased that the interesting thing is I learned it so well that to this day, I know how to take time payments of money, and I can do a gradiated incline. I can shift and make payments where it's first payment 6 months in and then 3 months increments and then 6 months. I can tear these things apart. And if you give me a nice calculator, I know exactly how to plug in all the problems also. And I could create a spreadsheet.
Right.
And to this day, I got that degree back in 1992. And here it is 30 years later. And I know it like the back of my hand. You give me an economics problem and good God, I know exactly how to solve it. The difference between memorizing and regurgitating and not knowing and being able to internalize the understanding and make it part of you so that you can play with it, you can dance with it, you can show other people how to go about doing it so that they can do it also. Night and day. And this is what was missing in the Ruffians experience. They really weren't trying to understand. They truly weren't trying to internalize the disciplines. They really missed out and cheated themselves in the opportunity that presented itself. And as a result, their temple was never completed because they cheated themselves out of the experience of internalizing the disciplines that were necessary for them to not only complete the temple, but make it so that they can live within it. Therein lies the difference between apprentices and a master mason. The apprentices, they haven't completed it, so they don't have the discipline. They don't know what they don't know. So if they tried to live within whatever it is they built, they will be coming up so short that they will be suffering.
I think we nailed the first two for sure. You have, the one ruffian who's looking for the shortcut, that wants the quick way to do it with the minimal amount of work. Hey, can you just give me the answer? And the second one, yes, was trying to cheat, was defrauding others and themselves, because what they saw was, when you listen to their words in the degree work, is the temple's almost completed. They were promised something, and now they're trying to get that something before the job is done, so to speak, which I think also pins the needle on the final issue, which nowadays people call it FOMO, fear of missing out. But it really comes to the fear or the immaturity that some men suffer, where when they see others being successful or something moving in a positive direction, they can't look into themselves and say, well, what work do I need to do? What self-improvement do I need to do to lift myself up? There must be a way for me to just go out and get that. How can I obtain that quickly?
The first one was impatient. He had not disciplined himself in impulse control and figured that if he just put enough time into it, literally banging away with a 24-inch gauge, he'll get what he wants. And no, you can't just put the time in. You have to use your time wisely. And he didn't have wisdom's passport on this. Definitely, he didn't have wisdom. The second one, we're talking about the square of virtue. He's banging away with the square of virtue, and he really figured that if he hit with it hard enough, that he'd get what he wanted. But the problem is, he was lacking all morality, all virtue. The virtue wasn't there in his actions. So although he had a working tool, he did not know how to use it, nor did he have the virtue to use it wisely. And the last one has got multiple directions you could take it. And I've taken it in many different directions, but for this is unbelievably missing in the instruction. The setting maul is the old version of something that we call the dead blow hammer. If you know anything about the dead blow hammer, you know that it is purposely designed to nudge and to move and to shape without destroying. And when you hit with a dead blow hammer, which is the modern day equivalent of the setting maul, the tool is designed not to harm what it hits. Now think about that. The tool is designed not to harm. And what did the ruffian do? He used a tool that is literally designed not to harm. And what does he do? He cracks the skull. And I'll go one step further and say he believed that if he had enough strength behind what it was that he was wielding, he'd get his way.
Right.
And strength doesn't work that way. Not without destroying the target to which it's directed at. And if you notice, all three exhibited all the characteristics that entered apprentices are trying to reel in and bring under control. And not one of them showed any characteristic of an entered apprentice who has been doing the work.
In a few minutes, we're going to talk a little bit past the character and how we as master masons, upright masons, can try to be different. Knowing what the weaknesses are, we can go, hey, there's an alternative path instead of being like the ruffians, I should say. But first, I want to get to the history of the ruffians, because I always find this really unique with you. We were having a conversation, and so many of our great conversations actually happen after we turn off the recordings here for the podcast. And you got into the breakdown of the ruffians' names. And can you share the research on that?
There's a lot of speculation that it's a bastardization of a word that migrated into what we have today. And what we find is that, no, that's not correct. Some people speculate that they're Latin, or they're indicating something that is a Latin root, the feminine, masculine, and neuter, past tense, future, and none of that works out. There's also speculation as to the last letter is, if you put it together, you get Aum, which indicates the Buddhist meditation word that is used very often as a way of contemplating life. And all of these are wonderful speculations, given that if you start from square one and don't know what square one is, you're grabbing at straws. And quite honestly, I stumbled across something that was profound. I heard somebody giving a lecture, and he said something in French. And once he said it in French, I said, holy crow, that sounds awful lot like one of the ruffians' names. And I did further research, and I actually pulled out my trusty smartphone and did one of those French to English translations. And lo and behold, after a lot of head knocking and forging through, I found out that each one of these names literally is a French phrase. And I won't say what they are, but it's not French, modern day French. It's a derivative of an almost extinct dialect of French. It's only exists in one place in the world today. And that's, of course, where I first heard it. This guy was from that area, and he spoke it. And the moment I heard it, I said, there's something here. There's got to be something here. And the more I tunneled down that rabbit hole, the more I came to realize that I was onto something. And yes, I was. I did find out what the phrases meant. And when you understand what they mean in French, you understand exactly what it was they were after.
Interesting. So a little bit of a path to get there. And I'm not going to be a ruffian by saying, well, can you just tell me? I won't tell anybody else. But that's a good one. Well, so that is the point that, you and I had a conversation, and I believe this was, months ago. We were talking about the lost word, the master's word. And you had started talking about your knowledge of it and your understanding of it. And I'm trying to follow along, like I think many of our listeners do. And we get to the end of the program, and I'm like, John, I don't want to sound like a total idiot here. I took a lot of notes and I wrote things down. I still don't understand completely what you were talking about. And you started explaining it more, and I'm like, can't you just tell me? And that's when you said, Michael, stop. You're acting like a ruffian. Stop it. And I'm like, Whoa, I am. I didn't even realize that I was doing it in real life. I wasn't trying to cheat you for telling me the word. I was just trying to take the shortcut path to get there by saying, hey, I think I'm worthy. If it's something you can tell me, you can just tell me. And you really can't. And I think
brother, hold on. I can tell you, and I'm not gonna follow by. Then I'd have to kill you. I can tell you, but the problem is that the secrets have to be discovered on your own.
Right.
And when I say discovered, please understand, I'm really not saying discovered in the sense that you've got to go out and find it. When I say discovered is you've got to take what it is that is pointed toward in the degrees, and you've got to internalize that. And by internalizing it, you discover for yourself that you have strengths that you never had before and abilities far beyond what most people have. And I'll give you a typical example. If you study the trivium, what happens is an entire world opens up for you. You're capable of reading things that most people are incapable of understanding. When you develop the logic aspect of the trivium, you're able to understand where people mislead themselves or are misled by others. And of course, rhetorical study, you start to understand how you and others are persuaded by the way sentences and words are chosen and put together. And there's no way that you're going to be able to read a holy book like the Bible without a firm foundation in the trivium. Sure, you could learn how to read and write, and you could read the Bible, but you're not going to be able to understand it at a depth or a level that it was intended to be understood. So when I say you've got to discover it on your own, it's more along the lines of you've got to put the work in to develop and internalize the disciplines that are necessary for you to experience life at a whole different level. And that's the secrets of Masonry, is internal disciplines that the average person doesn't have.
And that was the big lesson for me when to bring it back to the ruffians, is that they did not have the fortitude to do that. They did not see that they had errors in their life, that they were incomplete, that their temple wasn't finished for a reason, that they still had work to be done. And when you said that to me, and it started clicking, and I'm like, this is just like asking a friend for the answers to a test that I didn't study for. This is just like trying to find a discount for something that I haven't earned because I don't have that loyalty rewards card or that program. This is just like feeling like everybody else is getting somewhere in life and I'm not getting there. What is it that I need to do to try to join, to affiliate with, to get to that point, not realizing that people get to where they are because of the work that they've put into being there. And that was the moment where it all kind of like clicked and opened up inside of me.
Are you familiar with the story of Cain and Abel?
Yes.
Okay. We all are told or come away from the story saying, oh, Cain's sin was killing his brother. But the fact of the matter, his sin was throwing stuff at God and saying that was good enough, fully realizing that it wasn't good enough. His offering was rejected, was not favored, was actually not blessed. because he just took what was hanging around and threw it at the target. There was no planning. There was no purpose. There was no good intent. In fact, it was very ill-mannered to just take what was hanging around and throw. Where his brother, he took the youngest and he took the best and the fattest and offered that up. So God favored Abel. Well, the first sin, well, the overall sin was arrogance. The rules don't apply to me. Then from the rules don't apply to me came, well, I don't have to try as hard as anybody else. I can just show up and get the trophy.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you know, you know, a lot of people nowadays say that's a common occurrence. You show up, you get the trophy. And when he showed up and didn't get the trophy, he got very, very angry. You know, how dare you not give me a trophy? I showed up, I should get one. Total entitlement mentality. And then to make matters worse, he recognized that his brother merited the reward. And rather than merit the reward and try harder himself, he canceled his brother. He literally pulled the rug out from under his brother, sabotaged his ability to merit anything at all. You know, he literally killed his brother. And as a result, his greatest curse was the fact that he would live the rest of his life recognizing that he chose not to live up to a certain standard. And as a result, now he's got to carry that burden for the rest of his life. Mm. And you take a look at the ruffians, what happened is all three of them, they wanted something. They wanted, because they showed up, they wanted the trophy. They felt entitled. And then when they weren't given it, they got angry. And basically what they did was they canceled Hiram. and now nobody gets, I'll show you, nobody will get anything. Mm. And we have brothers who sometimes act that way.
And it's also interesting because if you're thinking of Jubilo, Jubilum, and Jubilah and thinking they did this horrible thing, but they actually weren't alone. In the original Third Degree, there were more villains because there were also more good guys. As we have talked about openly on the podcast before, Noah was actually kind of the central character, and kind of the same thing where there was a secret that Noah had, a divine secret from up above. And of course, that secret was how to build the ark and protect, humanity for the next level. And his sons wanted that secret. And there were also two other characters in the early Third Degrees. I can't remember the name of the second one, but the third one was the beginning of Hiram Abiff. And when I started reading these, and I'll share the piece that I found it from, was part of researching Graham's manuscript, I started thinking about the origins of these ruffians, and that they are really kind of, as you mentioned, traced to men who were desirous to obtain a secret without really having any virtue. And it really started opening up more of an ethical question to me, is that when we are in that situation, do we realize that what we're searching for to be good for ourselves is actually hurting others by our actions to do so?
Well, I'm sure Hiram would agree, if he were still alive, that their passion to obtain something went far beyond due bounds. And this is one of the things I love about the teachings of Freemasonry. When you have passion, Freemasonry doesn't say, do away with that passion. You shouldn't have passion. What it says is, if you've got passion, what you want to do is keep it within arm's length, so to speak, circumscribe your passions and keep your desires within due bounds. But nowhere should your passions impact other people in a negative fashion. It's okay to pursue your own passions, but when it negatively impacts others, when I know that when I have passion, I know I'm willing to suffer to get what I want. And if you talk with anybody who has a passion, they will admit to you, yeah, I'm willing to tolerate and put up with a lot of stuff. If I love something, I will suffer in ways that I would not normally suffer for other things to get what it is that I want. And Freemasonry doesn't say, no, you don't have to not suffer. You just got to make sure that suffering isn't visited upon your brothers, your family, your relatives, your coworkers, your boss, your subordinates, your neighbors. Have your passion. Just do not exercise it in such a way that others will suffer because of it.
Really couldn't have summed that one up better myself. There's a reason why we keep inviting him back on our podcast, and he'll be returning during the July 4th holiday. Actually, our next episode is going to be falling on Monday, July 4th. We'll have a little summer reading as we get ready to share one of Brother John's titles here for those that are watching on his YouTube video, Building Hiram Volume 1. It's actually one of the first books I ever got from you. Not from you, but from your collection. And when I was still going through as a newly raised Master Mason, and I found it very moving and inspiring, and all these years later I get a chance to talk to the author, so we will be doing a little book digest on our Monday, July 4th podcast episode.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to it, Brother Michael.
Until then, a reminder that new episodes of our podcast are available every Monday morning. You let peace and harmony prevail.